Mark, we have to find him!
Hey parents, Carmine here with your video review of Call of Duty Ghosts. The Call of Duty franchise has always been about fast-paced first-person combat, and Call of Duty Ghosts is no exception. Regardless of how you feel about an individual game within the franchise, it would be impossible to overlook Call of Duty's influence on the shooter genre. Call of Duty Ghosts campaign puts the player in the middle of a defensive war against a numerically and technologically superior enemy force. The only factor in this game is violence. Since this is a first-person shooter, the player will use a variety of weapons to kill enemies. Hits will result in some blood, but it's usually difficult to see due to the smoke, lighting effects, fast-paced nature of the combat, and sometimes the distance between the player and the target. There is no gore at any time in this game. The blood is even less noticeable in multiplayer, where most players will spend the majority of their time. Multiplayer combat can be ridiculously fast-paced, so there's very little time to stop and admire the mayhem at any given point. There were a few exceptions in the campaign. There were two space-based combat sections where blood was a bit more obvious. This was mostly because the blood would contrast starkly to the spacesuits and the astronauts, and because it would float nearby the body for a few seconds instead of falling to the ground or dissolving in the air. However, even this blood would disappear after a few seconds. There were also a couple of times where the player had to see or engage in scripted execution sequences. However, these were very infrequent, brief, and only included slightly more blood than the average kill. Normal melee attacks are extremely quick and result in no noticeable blood at all. That's really it for mature content, but there is one more thing I feel compelled to mention. While every game has its fair share of trolls and bullies, Call of Duty is one of a few franchises that seems especially susceptible to excessive trash-talking, taunting, and other forms of unsportsmanlike conduct. While I believe that the design for multiplayer in Ghosts is excellent for new players, I must caution that anyone with thin skin will find Call of Duty's online community to be difficult to deal with. Players can avoid this by sticking to the cooperative extinction mode, which I highly recommend, but anyone who tries out the multiplayer should be well aware that sooner or later they will be the target of online harassment. Call of Duty Ghosts left me wanting more of its single-player campaign, but the new Extinction game mode is a great way to mix up the very familiar multiplayer. As a result of the lack of gore or any other mature content, we gave this game a recommended age of 14 years old. For the full written review, including the extra categories, log on to SideStoryGames.com.